She decided half an hour ago, and she is sticking the last diamond into her hair," said Valentin. "What has taken possession of my daughter?" demanded Madame de Bellegarde, sternly. "She has not been into the world these 3 years. Does she take such a step at a half hour's notice, and without consulting me?" "She consulted me, dear mother, 5 minutes since," said Valentin, "and I told her that such a beautiful woman—she is beautiful, you will see—had no right to bury herself alive." "You should have referred Claire to her mother, my brother," said M. de Bellegarde in French. "This is very strange." "I refer her to the whole company," said Valentin. "Here she comes." And he went to the open door, met Madame de Cintré on the threshold, took her by the hand and led her into the room. She was dressed in white, but a long blue cloak, which hung almost to her feet, was fastened across her shoulders by a silver clasp. She had tossed it back, however, and her long white arms were uncovered. In her dense, fair hair there glittered a dozen diamonds. She looked serious, and Newman thought rather pale; but she glanced round her, and when she saw him, smiled and put out her hand. He thought her tremendously handsome. He had a chance to look at her full in the face, for she stood a moment in the center of the room, hesitating, apparently, what she should do, without meeting his eyes. Then she went up to her mother, who sat in her deep chair by the fire, looking at Madame de Cintré almost fiercely. With her back turned to the others, Madame de Cintré held her cloak apart to show her dress. "What do you think of me?" she asked. "I think you are audacious," said the marquise. "It was but 3 days ago when I asked you, as a particular favor to myself, to go to the Duchess de Lusignan, and you told me you were going nowhere and that one must be consistent. Is this your consistency? Why should you distinguish Madame Robineau? Who is it you wish to please tonight?" "I wish to please myself, dear mother," said Madame de Cintré, and she bent over and kissed the old lady. "I don't like surprises, my sister," said Urbain de Bellegarde, "especially when one is on the point of entering a drawing-room." Newman at this juncture felt inspired to speak. "Oh, if you are going into a room with Madame de Cintré, you needn't be afraid of being noticed yourself." M. de Bellegarde turned to his sister with a smile too intense to be easy. "I hope you appreciate a compliment that is paid you at your brother's expense," he said. "Come, come, madame." And offering Madame de Cintré his arm, he led her rapidly out of the room. Valentin rendered the same service to young Madame de Bellegarde, who had apparently been reflecting on the fact that the ball dress of her sister-in-law was much less brilliant than her own, and yet had failed to derive absolute comfort from the reflection. With a farewell smile she sought the compliment of her consolation in the eyes of the American visitor, and perceiving in them a certain mysterious brilliancy, it is not improbable that she may have flattered herself she had found it. Newman, left alone with old Madame de Bellegarde, stood before her a few moments in silence. "Your daughter is very beautiful," he said at last. "She is very strange," said Madame de Bellegarde. "I am glad to hear it," Newman rejoined, smiling. "It makes me hope." "Hope what?" "That she will consent some day to marry me." The old lady slowly rose to her feet. "That really is your project, then?" "Yes. Will you favor it?" "Favor it?" Madame de Bellegarde looked at him a moment and then shook her head. "No," she said softly. "Will you suffer it, then? Will you let it pass?" "You don't know what you ask. I am a very proud and meddlesome old woman." "Well, I am very rich," said Newman. Madame de Bellegarde fixed her eyes on the floor, and Newman thought it probable she was weighing the reasons in favor of resenting the brutality of this remark. But at last, looking up, she said simply, "How rich?" Newman expressed his income in a round number, which had the magnificent sound that large aggregations of dollars put on when they are translated into francs. He added a few remarks of a financial character, which completed a sufficiently striking presentment of his resources. Madame de Bellegarde listened in silence. "You are very frank," she said finally. "I will be the same. I would rather favor you, on the whole, than suffer you. It will be easier." "I am thankful for any terms," said Newman. "But for the present you have suffered me long enough. Good night." And he took his leave. CHAPTER XI.